Hi, I'm Amy and welcome to my channel where you can learn how to rewire your mind and become the most secure version of yourself. This is video number 2 in my series about attachment styles. Video number 1 is available if you want to go and check that out. This is video number 2 and I'm going to be going through from a really high level the anxious preoccupied attachment style. So I'll be going through what the different core wounds are, what the behaviour patterns are, what the relationship needs and expectations are, and the relationship to boundaries, just so that you can ascertain whether this is your attachment style or you know somebody that is. And it gives you a bit of a head start so that you can see what core wounds might be there for you, so that you can work to really reprogram those and move the needle towards secure as quickly as possible. So what are the root causes of the anxious preoccupied attachment style? Number 1 is inconsistency in childhood in relation to caregivers. And number 2 is real or perceived abandonment, which could have been emotionally or physically. So for example, you might have had a parent that left and never came back, which was a real abandonment. Or you might have had a parent that consistently threatened to leave, so they didn't actually leave, but it was still a perceived abandonment. Okay, so what are the common characteristics of APs? So I'm going to go through what the characteristics are, which are good and bad. So there might be some characteristics in here that you might want to keep, because every attachment style has endearing features about it and has endearing qualities, and you don't want to get rid of those. You just want to reprogram the areas which aren't serving you. So as an AP, APs tend to be charismatic, kind, attentive in close relationships, warm, likable. They like to move fast in relationships and they prioritise relationships and social interaction. Okay, so what are some core wounds that you might notice as an anxious preoccupied? Number 1 is usually I am or I will be abandoned, sorry. So this is usually the number 1. The other beliefs are I am unsafe, I will be alone, I'm not good enough, I am or I will be rejected, I am or I will be unloved, I am excluded, and I am disliked. And that isn't an exhaustive list, but these are the main ones that come in when I've spoken to anxious preoccupied individuals. So these are the ones that I've noticed. So along with behaviour patterns and belief patterns, we have emotional patterns as well. When we're triggered and when an AP activates, they might feel these things on a regular basis, which are sadness, loneliness, insecurity, fearfulness, worried, anxious, desperate, or regret. So if you're feeling these things quite often, that the chances are that you fall into the anxious preoccupied attachment style. Okay. What needs do APs have in relation to their attachment style? So the number 1 need for APs is love, intimacy, closeness and connection. So these are things that are at the top of the totem pole for anxious preoccupied individuals. Validation and reassurance, certainty and consistency, presence, to be seen, heard and understood, and inclusion and community. Okay, so what are the AP's relationship to boundaries? Now, APs often are boundaryless or have very little boundaries, particularly in close relationships. They might feel afraid to set boundaries. They might be afraid to rock the boat if they do. They might be afraid to be disliked if they set boundaries. They might even sabotage their own boundaries to prioritise proximity. So what I mean by this is if you've got a partner, for example, who's been disrespectful to you or in an argument, you might become overly agreeable and really tend to that person's needs rather than your own, just to keep that person around because you don't want them to leave. Okay, so APs often don't realise the importance of boundaries in relationships. Okay, and as a former AP myself, I understand completely how that destroys the relationship that you have with yourself, because if you're either going around boundaryless or you're not showing up for your boundaries, what you are feeding into the subconscious mind is that you can't trust yourself to keep yourself safe. Okay, so you seek safety on the outside through other people instead of going on the inside and looking at ways that you keep yourself safe. Okay, so That's just what my experience was. So what are the relationship expectations for APs? So these are: my partner should soothe my emotions. My partner should provide certainty at all times. My partner should know how I feel and read my mind. My partner is responsible for meeting all of my needs. My partner should be available. Romantic relationships should be the highest priority, and romantic gestures in relationships should be frequent. Now, I am not saying that there's anything wrong with having those needs in a relationship. However, APs tend to have a real issue and a real struggle to really communicate what their needs are in a relationship. So they're not giving their partner the best chance of being able to meet those needs or be able to come up with some sort of compromise. And instead what happens then is resentment then builds because their partner isn't meeting their needs. And anxious, preoccupied individuals also struggle to be able to fulfill their own needs as well. So if you fall into these categories, and if you are noticing these behavior patterns or thought patterns within yourself, it is definitely worth targeting those core wounds and core beliefs and looking at what your highest needs are, and look at ways that you can try and meet those needs yourself, okay? And look at how you can communicate those needs to a partner. So on top of that, what behavioural coping mechanisms do APs have? So APs will tend to cling. Okay, so if there is an argument or conflict, the first initial reaction for anxious preoccupied is to cling to that person to maintain proximity, and this is driven by the fear of abandonment. Trying to provoke a caring response from their partner or trying to make them jealous. Testing in relationships is quite common. Attention or approval seeking behaviours. They might express panic, anxiety and neediness regularly. They might criticise their partner, or they might fawn, which is obviously a fear response. So fight, flies, freeze or fawn. So what is fawning? Fawning is being overly agreeable or really tending to your partner's needs rather than your own, just so they don't leave you. Okay, so it is a fear response. So if you notice yourself doing this, look at what the underlying fear is. And if you're anxious, preoccupied, the likelihood is that it's a fear of abandonment. Okay, so they are the main components for anxious, preoccupied attachment style. And if you notice any of those things within you, again, the takeaway from this is to really know what your core wounds are so that you can begin to reprogram those. I've got quite a few videos on how to reprogram your subconscious mind, which will help you out with this. So again, try not to sort of think, oh my gosh, I have to get this healed, otherwise I'm not gonna change and I'm not gonna have the relationship that I want. Try and go into it with more of a curiosity, more than I have to know what this is, because you know that's just going to add another layer of resistance to what it is that you want, and it's going to make life a lot easier for you in finding these core beliefs and core wounds and healing them. So that's the end of today's video. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel so that you can become aware of when new videos are coming out. I'm going to do the next video, which is on fearful, avoidant or disorganized attachment styles, it's sometimes called, and I shall see you in the next video.